In 1980, a benefits consultant named Ted Benna found a clause buried in a tax code nobody was reading. He built something with it, something that now holds over $7 trillion of American retirement savings. 30 years later, the man who created it called it a monster. Not a critic, not a regulator, the man who built it. So the question worth asking is, what did he see that you were never supposed to see? To understand what went wrong, go back to 1978. Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1978, a routine tax bill ignored by the public, studied carefully only by corporate tax lawyers. Inside it was Section 401k, a clause allowing certain deferred compensation arrangements to be structured as tax-advantaged employee accounts. Nobody drafting that legislation was thinking about retirement security for the average worker. The provision targeted executive bonus arrangements. That is where it started. Ted Benna was a benefits consultant in Pennsylvania. While working through the tax code on a client project in 1980, he found Section 401k and saw something nobody else had noticed: a structure allowing both employer and employee to contribute pre-tax dollars into a personal savings account, sheltered from income tax until retirement. He designed a plan around it, submitted it to the IRS, and that's when everything started moving in a direction Benna did not anticipate. The IRS approved the design. Companies noticed, but what they noticed was not that their employees had a powerful new savings tool. What they noticed was a way out of something far more expensive. In 1980, roughly 60% of private sector workers in America had a pension, a defined benefit plan. The employer makes all contributions, absorbs all investment risk, and guarantees a fixed monthly payment for the life of the employee, regardless of what the markets do. That structure had one significant problem for the employer. It was expensive. It required actuarial projections decades in advance. It required companies to remain solvent long enough to honor promises made to workers who had not yet retired. And if the market moved badly, the company absorbed the loss every time. No exceptions. The 401k changed that math entirely. Under a defined contribution plan, the employee makes the contributions. The employee selects the funds. The employee absorbs every dollar of risk. If the market drops 40% in the year before you retire, that loss belongs to you. The employer's obligation ends at the match, and the match in difficult years is historically the first expense companies cut. By 2020, fewer than 15% of private sector workers still had a traditional pension, 60% to 15% in 40 years. That shift had a cost, and it was not paid by the people who made it. Here is a number that needs to land correctly. The median 401k balance in America, not the average, the median, meaning half of all Americans have less than this exact amount, sits at approximately $38,000. $7.4 trillion total is in these accounts. The median is $38,000. Drop your balance in the comments, not to compare with anyone, because I want to understand what this system has actually produced for the workers who have been faithfully contributing to it for decades. But the balance is only part of what Benna came to see. The other part lives in the fee structure, and it costs more than it appears. Here is how fees work inside a 401k. Contributions go in pre-tax. The money sits in funds managed by financial services firms. Those firms charge annual management fees, a percentage of your total balance, every year, regardless of how the fund performs. The industry average has hovered around 1% annually. 1%, small enough to feel harmless. Here is what it actually removes. On a $100,000 portfolio growing at 7% annually over 30 years, a 1% annual fee does not cost you $30,000. It costs you approximately $76,000. The percentage stays the same every year. The compounding works against you with the same patience it works for you. And the firms collecting those fees carry a legal obligation to their shareholders, not to you, not to your retirement outcome. Benna understood this, eventually. In 2011, he gave an interview. He was 68 years old. The system he had created was holding trillions of dollars of American savings, and he said, plainly, that it had become a monster. "I helped open Pandora's box," he told reporters. And what came out of it, he said, was not what he had built. What Benna intended was a simple savings vehicle, accessible, low cost, simple enough that any worker, regardless of financial background, could use it correctly without professional guidance. But the financial industry built something different with that framework. The simplicity disappeared first. A typical 401k plan today offers dozens of fund options, each with its own expense ratio, risk classification, performance history, and legal disclosures written to satisfy regulators rather than to inform the worker holding the account. The average American worker, earning between $30,000 and $70,000, working full-time, managing debt, raising children, is expected to make sophisticated investment decisions consistently for 40 years without a single significant mistake. 40 years without a single significant mistake. You were not trained for that, but the system is built as though you were, or as though it does not matter whether you were. The pension system before this one did not require you to be an investor. An actuary made the decisions, a fund manager executed them. You worked, you collected the payment. The risk sat with the institution that employed you. The 401k moved that risk, quietly, over 2 decades. The transfer was nearly invisible because the markets were, in many of those years, rising. But the risk had moved permanently from institutions with professional investment staff to individuals reviewing a quarterly statement once a year. $7.4 trillion in American 401k accounts, a median balance of $38,000. That gap is what 40 years of transferred risk looks like in practice. If you know someone actively contributing to a 401k right now who has never seen these numbers, this is the video to send them. Benna's regret is specific. He is not calling for elimination. What he is describing is the gap between what he designed and what the industry built around it. The tool he made to be simple was made complex, and complexity inside financial products has one reliable beneficiary, and it is not the worker. Decades of contributions, decades of trust, one structural shift that quietly transferred who absorbs the consequences when the math goes wrong. The math was always going to land here. That understanding changes what you should do with your account beginning today. None of this means stop contributing. That is not the lesson here. A 401k is a tool, and what matters is knowing exactly how it works and who benefits when you use it on default settings. The fee problem has a fix: low-cost index funds. A total market index fund inside your 401k will likely outperform most actively managed options in your plan over 20 years at a fraction of the annual cost. Before your next enrollment window, look at the expense ratio of every available fund. If any fund charges above 0.5% annually, a better option is almost certainly in the same plan. The complexity problem also has a fix. 1 or 2 broad funds rebalanced once a year will produce better long-term outcomes than attempting to optimize a portfolio you don't have the time or infrastructure to manage properly. But the underlying risk problem, the quiet transfer that happened between 1980 and 2000, requires something different. It requires knowing that the system was not built for your retirement. It was built around your retirement. There is a difference. Benna built a door. The industry built a maze around it. Your job now is to find the door. The next video goes through exactly what to do inside a 401k when you know the default settings are working against you. The link is at the end of this one. What part of this hit hardest? Drop it below.